I'm Nick Snow, watching government for Oil and Gas Journal in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Department of Transportation is acting to improve rail safety requirements for crude oil transportation, Government Accountability Office investigators found. But additional actions are needed to improve pipeline safety, especially for unregulated gathering lines, GAO said in a report it released on September 22nd. Gathering line construction has grown significantly in response to shale oil and gas development, but it's not known by how much, the Congressional Government Watchdog Service said. State officials in Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Texas, and West Virginia told GAO investigators that companies have invested in gathering infrastructure significantly, it added. Historically, federally unregulated gathering pipelines were low-pressure, smaller diameter lines and were generally in rural areas where there was less safety risk, the report said. Now, say officials from DOT's Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, industry, and state pipeline safety agencies, larger diameter and higher pressure gathering lines are being constructed, including in areas closer to populations. Pipeline operators and industry organizations told GAO's investigators that new gathering lines probably would be safer because they would be less susceptible to corrosion and other conditions leading to leaks in older pipelines. They also said some large diameter, higher pressure gathering lines would be built to transmission line standards in largely rural areas, where they pose less risk. Nonetheless, state pipeline regulators, PHMSA officials, and safety organizations expressed concern with the potential safety threat of unregulated gathering pipelines of this size, the report said. It said some stakeholders also expressed concern over emergency response capabilities, since PHMSA's planning requirements in that regard don't apply to rural gathering lines. Given the lack of PHMSA regulation of rural gathering pipelines, the extent, location, and construction practices for those lines is largely unknown by federal, state, and local officials, and oversight to verify the construction and monitor operators' safety practices is lacking, the report concluded. It conceded that federal and state pipeline inspection resources are limited. However, if PHMSA were to set minimal federal requirements for gathering lines, this would enable the agency to include currently federally unregulated rural gathering lines in decisions for prioritizing resources to address safety risks, the report said. Regulators, investigators interviewed in the 4 states said their resources also might be strained, but supported regulating rural gathering lines, it noted. Responding to GAO's report, DOT Assistant Secretary for Administration Brody Fontenot said a rulemaking is being developed to examine whether federal safety requirements for gas gathering lines need to be adopted. DOT also is encouraging states to enact their own gathering line requirements that go beyond federal regulations, Fontenot said. That's Watching Government for this week. In Washington, I'm Nick Snow for Oil and Gas Journal.